Incredible moment. Bar threat becomes transformative as two black twins revealed as heroes. The coffee shop was alive. Laughter bounced off the walls like playful children in a park. Malik's fingers danced over the pages of his sketchbook, images of vibrant cityscapes spilling from his imagination. Jamal, on the other side of the register, wore a smile that hid his doubts as he served the morning crowd. Their cadence was harmony, yet underneath the soundtrack of espresso machines and chatter, Malik felt a squeeze in his chest, an anxious whisper that he was meant for more than serving lattes. Was he just a dreamer lost among whirring machines and fleeting customers? Malik paused, his pencil hovering mid-air, steeped in self-doubt. The weight of the world pressed heavily on him, and he inhaled sharply, wishing for clarity. Every artistic impulse was tinged with uncertainty. Could he bear the burden of pursuing his passion, knowing how little room there was for failure on the South Side? Jamal, energetic and confident, seemed to have it all figured out, yet Malik could sense the same flicker of hesitation in his brother's eyes as their gazes met over the counter. As another gust of frigid wind announced the entrance of a new customer, the atmosphere shifted. A figure clad in darkness, the kind of shadow that made the heart skip, strode in with purpose, a mask obscuring the lower half of their face. Malik's breath hitched as silence enveloped the room, replaced by an eerie tension that tasted like fear. The unmistakable glint of a weapon caught the fluorescent light, and instinct took hold. "Everyone stay calm," the assailant bellowed, cutting through the hushed air like a knife. Malik's palms grew clammy, and the sketchbook slipped from his grasp, closing on a drawing half-formed. He fought off the panic rising in his throat. This was not how he envisioned his leap of faith into artistry ending. Not like this, not here. As four terrified faces stared back at him, each blink mirroring his own terror, something shifted. The elderly woman who always shared her wisdom, her eyes wide with fright. Could he really stand connected to creativity and bravery all at once? "Malik!" Jamal's voice broke through the chaos as he moved closer to protecting their customers. Malik's heart raced at the sight of his brother, an instinctive urgency bounding through him. With shaking hands raised, he stepped forward, searching for a thread of courage amidst his fear. "Wait! We can find a solution!" His voice strained against the rising tide in the room, trembling against the noise around him. He felt vulnerable enough that even his dreams seemed to pale against this irreversible moment. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The stranger's eyes darted from Jamal's protective stance back to Malik's defiance. He could feel the intensity of their desperate breaths intertwining. In that moment, the weight of unfulfilled aspirations pressed more heavily on him than ever. As uncertainty nagged at his resolve, he questioned whether he had the strength to confront this chaos. Could he truly become a beacon of hope amid darkness? He caught a glimpse of his brother, whose focus on the patrons revealed unspoken resolve, and declared to himself that he had to try for both of them. But as the tension escalated, every second felt like a lifetime. Would their fragile world shatter in an instant? Fear and a strange sense of purpose surged through Malik. The clock ticked down their moments of glory. Their potential awaiting a decisive action birthed from the depths of their hearts. Would courage really bloom in the ashes of this terror, or would they wilt beneath their fears, forever entangled in the questions of what could have been? Malik's heart raced in tandem with the palpable tension in the air. His thoughts twisted like vines, seeking clarity in a storm of fear and determination. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, and within that suffocating haze, a flicker of realization sparked. He wasn't just an artist, he was a brother, and Jamal needed him. "Listen," Malik shouted, his own voice surprising him in its firmness. Every eye in the room fixed on him, frozen, uncertain, awaiting the next move in this unscripted play of chaos.
The assailant hesitated, confusion flickering behind the mask. It was the vulnerability of those around him that ignited something deep within Malik. He recognized that his instincts for artistry could morph into something greater when applied to the situation at hand. His thoughts raced along parallel tracks, one of fear, urging him to retreat into silence, the other a roaring river of resolve. This was his moment to breach the confines of self-doubt, to confront not only the immediate danger, but to challenge the walls that had long constricted his ambitions. "Shut up," the figure barked, voice jagged with frustration. But Malik could sense the crack in their bravado, an opening in the storm. His gaze darted from the terrified customers to Jamal, whose unyielding gaze fed Malik's focus. They were brothers forged in the fire of their circumstances, and standing tall together could sweep away even the darkest shadows. "What if you walked out of here instead?" Malik offered, urgency tinging each word. "What if you could leave this place behind? You can still choose a different path." The assailant shifted, visibly torn, the weapon lowered slightly. For every pounding heartbeat, Malik felt a deeper connection to the vulnerability they all shared. In this live tableau, it wasn't just about survival, it was about realization, transformation. What if the spark of courage he wielded became a bridge for others, a chance to reclaim control over their destinies? Jamal broke through the tension, stepping forward with a voice tempered by sincerity. "We're not your enemies. Whatever led you here, we can help if you let us, but it starts with you." The breath in the room was electric, charged with an absolute potential. Malik felt the guidance of those who had shaped him, the elderly woman from earlier, the barista with gentle eyes, all reflections of his own heart stitched into the fabric of their shared community. He saw a chance for change, not only in himself, but in this stranger before them. Yet as the glimmer of empathy flickered between them, the brightness of possibility illuminated a dark corner, a flash of movement from the door. Just outside, 2 police officers unwittingly edged toward the cafe, oblivious to the scene unfolding inside. Malik's stomach twisted. The stakes were astoundingly high. His growth as an artist, a protector, a brother hung in balance. Malik inhaled deeply, a mixture of fear and determination surging through him. The moment was unfolding, but would he seize it or let it slip away? Would courage indeed become the canvas upon which he painted his life? Or would it dissolve into regret, a fleeting brushstroke lost in the chaos of hesitation? The time had come to face the unknown. A heartbeat seemed to stretch into eternity as Malik stood firm, the air thick with uncertainty. The man's eyes, barely visible through the mask, shifted, mirroring the tug of war between desperation and doubt. Malik took a slow step forward, a subtle gesture directed at drawing the assailant's focus away from the weapon and onto something less volatile. Connectivity, humanity, anything that could bridge an emotional gap. "Look, I understand what it feels like to be backed against a wall," Malik continued, his voice steadier now. "But you don't have to go down this path. You have choices. So do I. So does Jamal." Each word seemed to stick to the atmosphere, a potent mixture of fear and hope, filled with the potential to shift his narrative. A flicker of recognition appeared in the stranger's eyes, a moment of grace amid the tumult. Malik recognized the fragility of that glimmer. If he faltered now, if his courage waned, that light could dim, extinguished by fear or the arrival of those officers at the door. "Let us help you!" Jamal's voice rang out again, drawing Malik's focus back to him. "You don't need to continue this cycle. We can help you find a better way, a way that doesn't hurt anyone." There was a raw honesty in Jamal's tone, an echo of their upbringing seeping through. If anyone could reach the menace, it was the bond between brothers born into struggle. Malik felt it stirring within himself, the latent artist in him awakening not just to paint, but to inspire change, evoke emotion, and create understanding.
He had always envisioned stories expressed through colors on a canvas, but the narrative unfolding before him was a living, breathing tapestry of humanity. With calculated intensity, Malik reiterated, "What about the dreams you still have, the things you want to achieve, not just for you, but for those who care about you?" He beckoned, slowly, building a fragile connection, not a confrontation. "You don't have to walk this dark path. It can change. You can change." Silence hung over the cafe, ensnaring everyone's thoughts. The assailant's grip on the weapon trembled slightly, and the surrounding stillness amplified each heartbeat that echoed through the room. Malik's mind raced, contemplating not just the life hanging in balance, but his own potential to be more than just an observer in this chaotic tableau. Yet the timer of imminent crisis kept ticking. Malik could hear the faint soundtrack of sirens creeping closer. Panic threatened to rise again, an instinctual need to pull back, to escape whatever would come next. But he'd reached a precipice. Retreat wasn't an option. "Together, we can face whatever lies ahead," he said, locking eyes with the masked figure. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. It's never too late to rewrite your story." Finally, a softening of the tension broke through the assailant's hardened facade. Malik sensed that they were teetering on the edge of transformation. He wasn't just fighting for his and Jamal's safety, he was fighting for the very essence of redemption, for a chance to redirect a life trapped in despair. But just as the air began to shift, Malik heard a sharp noise from the door, the unmistakable sound of boots. The officers were inside now. "Drop the weapon!" a commanding voice bellowed. The moment collapsed into chaos, the fragile thread of connection teetering on the brink of shattering under pressure. Malik's breath quickened. Would he lose everything he just dared to build? Would this confrontation, so ripe with potential, dissolve into violence right before his eyes? He had stared into that abyss of uncertainty, but right now, faced with an escalating threat, he realized more was at stake than safety. It was about rediscovery, realization, and the urgency to respond in a way that mattered. With his heart pounding, he prepared for the consequences of his next move, unwilling to abandon a single moment that held the power to redefine their lives. How could he ensure that the courage they had summoned would not be extinguished in the face of imminent danger? Malik's instincts surged as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Time fragmented into a series of rapid images: the trembling hand of the assailant, Jamal's unwavering gaze, and the increasingly errant echoes of the officer's commands. Each component screamed for resolution, a climax that would lead towards disaster or deliverance. "Please, don't!" Malik's plea hung heavy in the air. He stepped even closer, as if proximity could somehow absorb the tension threatening to explode. "You don't want it to end this way." As he spoke, he considered the weight of his own presence. Every inch he advanced felt like a choice against his own safety, embodying a truth he now recognized. Leadership meant placing oneself in the line of fire, even when shadows lingered close. The masked man's face quivered, caught between the churning storm of instinct and the fleeting ember of connection Malik had sparked. Time had stopped ticking for him, yet the sirens outside hinted at the impending chaos. In that brief silence, he could feel the energy of the room shifting, but the shouts from the officers loomed like disapproving thunder. "Just put it down," the officer barked again, pulling Malik back to the immediate threat. Dread washed over him as he saw the assailant retreating further into panic. A flicker of fear transformed into erratic movement. Violence was an easy answer when stripped of choice. "Look at us," Jamal shouted, desperation now underscoring each syllable. Malik turned his head slightly, enjoining his brother in the silent agreement to push forward despite the imminent threat. With steady resolve, Malik gripped Jamal's arm, a reminder of their shared journey, their legacy. He had spent so long wrestling with his artistic temperaments, But through this chaos, a kind of clarity emerged. He was in control. He could affect change. You see these uniforms? They don't care about why you're here. They only see the danger. They only see a statistic. The assailant's weapon wavered. Moving instinctively, Malik took another step forward, shifting the narrative, the one they all participated in, away from violence and towards vulnerability. You wanted to be seen, right? This pain isn't just yours. It belongs to us all. Together we can navigate it. Please let us help you. The cries outside reached a fever pitch, voices bleeding through the door, but Malik sensed a strange stillness behind the mask before him. For a moment, he thought he could see a well-hidden sorrow. The man's trigger finger relaxed just a fraction, yet Malik understood it wasn't just about the weapon anymore. It was about visibility, about trust, and the potential for change. Just as relief began to sink into Malik, the crackle of radio static pierced through the chaos, a stark reminder of their dwindling time. "Engage with caution," the voice droned, urging the officers on the scene to take action. Malik's heart sank. There was no guarantee that this fleeting connection would hold under such scrutiny. Fear clenched at Malik's chest. What could he do now that the officers risked breaking through their attempt to build understanding? "Whatever happens, don't revert to who you used to be, please." Malik's voice rang genuinely. "You have the power to redefine this moment. We can rewrite your narrative." Suddenly, the man took a step backward, trembling. Malik stood at a precipice, grasping for a sliver of hope. Would the connection forged so briefly hold? And even as the stakes rose, Malik realized that stakes had shifted. This man was not just an assailant, but a reflection of Malik's own fears and potential. As officers closed in, the masked figure's eyes darted back at Malik, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. Malik understood. The power of transformation lay not just in the moment, but also depended on embracing the fear that drove it. How would he bridge that final chasm? Would they connect, or would this moment dissolve, leaving both sides to return to their former selves? In this fragile balance hung the urgency of truth. He had to make the next decision count. Malik held his breath, suspended in a moment that felt like an eternity. The masked man's eyes revealed a turmoil Malik could only begin to understand. It was a desperation that echoed his own, desperation to be recognized, to be valued, to break free from the chains of perception that dictated their paths. But as officers edged closer, the tension ballooned, a precarious dance between fate and recklessness. "Just let it go," Malik urged again, his voice steadier, fortified by the understanding that came from facing one's demons. The gun trembled in the assailant's grip, and Malik suppressed the urge to glance at the officers, knowing their sense of urgency might shatter whatever fragile connection they had forged. He became acutely aware of the noise, the chaotic shouts of the officers outside, the thump of his own heartbeat, and the unsteady breathing of the man before him. In this kaleidoscope of sound and emotion, he struggled to maintain his focus. Each second drew him deeper into his own recollections of loss and anger, intertwined with Jamal's quiet support. They had faced adversity before. It forged resilience and grit in both them. "Can you feel their fear?" Kenyel Malik questioned, gesturing vaguely towards the door where voices became more chaotic. "They don't understand you like we do, but we want to." As he spoke, he could feel Jamal's presence solidify beside him, lending strength to each word. In this moment, he realized that he had been shaping his professional identity through his art, telling stories through the vulnerability of brushstrokes, sharing narratives that demanded to be seen. Here he was, staring into another story, a man whose identity had been overshadowed by violence. Could art transcend that moment? Malik's fingers twitched, wishing he had a canvas to illustrate the emotions charged in the room, but instead he had language, the one medium that could bridge despair and understanding. "You don't have to be this person. You can rewrite your story.
We can rewrite it together. His own heart pounded in rhythm with the stakes that seemed impossibly high, yet so desperately within reach. A shift occurred in the assailant's eyes, and Malik honed in on it, sensing a flicker of possibility. Suddenly he envisioned not just the man before him, a product of pain, but a myriad of potential futures stretching into infinity. Reclaiming one's narrative could alter destinies, not just in the immediate moment, but for all who dared to dream beyond the confinement of their struggles. "What's your name?" Malik urged, his voice still gentle, still coaxing. The question came with an unexpected vulnerability. What if he learned the name of someone whose story had not yet been told? A name could symbolize a return to humanity, signaling that within the chaos lay not irredeemable action, but potential for change. The assailant hesitated, his mask of anger cracking, revealing the vulnerable face beneath. That small shift spurred Malik's desire to pull even closer, to reach out just a fraction more. But as the seconds passed, their weight grew heavier, and Malik felt the moment slipping through his fingers. The connection felt elusive, like smoke dissipating in the air. His mind raced with strategies and questions. Would the assailant trust him enough? Could he possibly transform the situation before the officers chose their course of action? The man's breathing grew erratic, while uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Just as it seemed a shared truth would be born out of vulnerability, the shout from the lead officer blared once more. "Get on the ground, now!" Malik's heart sank, knowing that this moment could shatter into chaos at any second. There was little time left. Standing at the brink of potential transformation, Malik questioned everything he had learned thus far. Had he really equipped himself to navigate this depth of human experience? The answer hung like a question mark, poised for resolution. In that charged atmosphere, Malik understood one sweeping truth. He had to make his intentions clear. The world was shaped by stories, but they would only change if given space to breathe. Would they uncover the truth together, or would the chance slip away, suffocated by fear and expectation?
Suddenly, he leaned in and stuck his neck out further than he ever planned to, prepared to take the risk necessary to alter their collective fate. "Tell me who you are." And as the unsteady eyes met his with a glimmer of recognition, the next pivotal moment loomed heavy in the air. Would their stories intertwine, or would fury triumph over trust, leading them all into oblivion? The silence that followed Malik's fervent plea felt crushing yet electric, charged with an urgency that demanded resolution. As the trembling figure before him grappled with the tumult of his emotions, Malik observed the shifting tide of resolve, a tension that might rise to swell against the walls of despair. Would this man become a conduit for change, or would despair embed him deeper into chaos? "Iman," the assailant finally uttered, his voice hoarse and shaky. The name hung in the air like a mantra, heavy with identity and tethered through to the marrow of their collective experience. Malik saw it as a bridge forming between them, a fleeting but critical connection in a world that so often fragmented human interactions into categories of fear or hatred. "Iman," Malik echoed softly, absorbing the weight of the name. It wasn't just a label, it was a story, a life filled with potential that had been marred by pain. Suddenly Malik understood the gravity of his role, not simply as an empath or a counselor, but as an artist capable of capturing the tumultuous beauty found in the rawness of life. "Iman, I need you to know that the past doesn't have to define you. Your story doesn't end here." With each word, Malik forged a path filled with hope, interweaving the threads of resilience and vulnerability that shaped their truths. He could feel a flicker of something in Iman's gaze, a spark of possibility igniting in the wreckage of despair. But each moment spent lingering on that budding connection risked the ire of the officers outside, their commands a stark reminder of the imminent danger. Malik felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. He could either allow fear to vanquish hope or embrace the challenge of compelling change spurred by vulnerability. His art had always been about this, transforming the raw material of life into something meaningful, evocative, powerful. Here lay the canvas of their narratives, blank yet brimming with potential. "Tell me about your dreams, Iman," Malik prompted urgently, his voice dipped in an even tone that masked a frantic urgency coursing through him. Iman's lips quivered, an uncharted territory of emotions churning beneath the surface. It was then that Malik realized the stakes were not limited to the immediate conflict. The encounter could serve as a touchstone for both of them, a moment that could spiral into a lifetime of introspection, catalyzing change. But vulnerability came at a price, the price of trust and the unnerving fear of rejection. Just
to be free, Iman stammered, revealing a sliver of his soul. Malik's heart raced in that instant. Freedom was a concept vibrant with possibility, yet often shackled by the past. It was painted in every shade of his own experience. "Then let's break these chains together," Malik declared, using every ounce of his conviction to inspire hope, urging himself to rise above the noise of the chaos that surrounded them. Each word poured forth as instinct grew sharper. He needed to guide Iman into the light rather than allow him to remain entangled in darkness. But doubt slithered in, creeping cautiously through his courage. Could a mere conversation shift destinies and redirect lives? He had previously relied on the brush. Would words be sharp enough to etch a new story? Before he could ponder further, the door battered under the weight of the officer's impatience. Malik recognized that time was running thin. Would Iman's revelation of identity, of aspiration, be enough to incite trust, or would it collapse under the pressure of forceful intervention? "Iman, look at me. Don't let fear drown your voice," Malik urged, fully aware that their moment was a delicate yet critical intersection of two lives yearning for understanding. His heart thumped with the promise of what could unfold, yet the command from the officer loomed heavy overhead, a storm threatening their fragile tapestry of hope. "Can you trust me?" Malik asked, feeling each syllable carry the weight of bearable courage. He needed to dismantle the walls that threatened to shield Iman from the very change he sought. As Iman hesitated, a fleeting shadow flickered across his features. Was it resolve or residual fear? Opposing forces clashed in their shared silence, and a single choice loomed on the horizon. Would this moment galvanize Iman to step through the door of possibility, or would he retreat to the shadows cast by uncertainty? The next heartbeat held the answer, and just as Iman began to breathe deeply, preparing to unlock the latent strength within him, the officer shouted again, "We're coming in!" With that declaration slicing through the atmosphere, Malik's mind raced with options as the world closed in. It was no longer merely about art or stories. It was about survival, transformation, and the potent intersection of their fates. Could they emerge from this moment not just as individuals, but as allies in their own narratives? Would their respective paths forge a partnership that defied the realities that had sought to entrap them? As the door rattled, anticipation hung palpably in the air. What would they choose as they faced the impending storm? Fear clawed at Malik's stomach as the door buckled violently against the officer's impending force. The warmth of the connection he felt with Iman threatened to dissolve beneath the cold grip of dread. They were on the brink of something monumental, yet the ticking clock felt like a whisper from the void, beckoning them towards chaos.
"Iman," he pleaded, desperation driving the urgency in his voice. "What do you want us to do?" I don't know." Iman's voice trembled, his hands shaking, caught between a choice that could reshape both their lives. The vulnerability he had briefly unveiled now concealed itself behind layers of fear once more, and Malik felt a pang deep within him. The wall was rising again, and he had only moments left to dismantle it. Suddenly, a surge of determination coursed through Malik. This wasn't merely an act of salvage, it was an opportunity to seize control of their narratives. He focused on Iman, employing each shard of certainty he could muster. The exterior screams of authority faded, creating a cocoon of resolve around them, allowing Malik to emerge as a steady beacon in the storm. "Iman, listen to me," he said, drawing closer, his voice steady and firm. "You said you want to be free. Define that freedom. What does that look like?" Iman appeared momentarily lost between worlds, the old confines of fear and the new possibility of liberation. Malik watched, intent and engrossed, as the young man's mind danced with uncharted dreams. Would his past chain him to a fate of misery, or could it reveal strength forged through struggle? "I just want," Iman faltered, eyes darting like a flicker of light struggling to find its source. "I want to be seen. I want to matter." The raw sincerity of Iman's words struck Malik like a thunderclap. They hung heavy in the air between them, shifting something within Malik. Perhaps seeing each other was their way forward, a moment not merely for survival, but for transformation. "I see you, Iman," he assured, grounding his words in authenticity. "I see you as a creation worthy of art, worthy of life. Trust that your voice matters. It can be a daunting flame in the darkness. Together, let's make it roar." As if ignited by Malik's assertion, Iman inhaled deeply, his body responding to Malik's unwavering gaze. Malik felt the subtle shift, a ripple of approach in Iman's demeanor, a potential cracking of the shell that fear had encased him in for so long. But the relentless noises outside threatened to erase this connection, a ticking clock counting down their final moments together. Malik's thoughts raced. Time was not merely expiring, it was closing in, convulsing with the harsh reality of sirens sweetened by uncertainty. "Whatever happens next," he urged, leaning into the gravity of their shared moment, "hold on to your vision of freedom. Whether you walk out of here today or not, it begins with you. Your future is unwritten. Make it yours." A furious crash filled the space as Iman's eyes ignited with fierce defiance. Yet just as the embers of hope flared, the officers began counting down, their actions completely inevitable.
Malik's heart thudded in unison with the rising panic, but instead of despair, an unexpected resolve blossomed inside him, an understanding that he could redirect this urgency into a final act of creation. In that instant, they were not just trapped individuals. They became artists, shaping their destinies amid the chaos. Together, they could define what happened next. As the door cracked further open, Malik found himself tapping into the deepest reservoir of his artistic soul, channeling energy that surged with the promise of revelation. "Iman, we might have to create our exit," Malik declared, his composure sharpening into the precise outline of a plan. "Follow my lead. We're not done yet." With the officers only steps away from breaching their sanctuary, they stood resolute, ready to transform this fateful encounter into a tapestry woven with audacity, hope, and an indelible bond. Would they emerge triumphant, or be swept into unknown depths? The outcome rested upon the strength they drew from each other and the conviction that reverberated in their hearts. And just as Malik moved to execute their daring plan, the door exploded inward, the officers flooding the space with urgent shouts, a cascade of hostility and misunderstanding crashing down upon their moment of clarity. They had but moments left. Would Iman and Malik rise together in this pivotal surge, or would they be swept apart in the current of chaos? The narrative of their lives hinged upon this singular moment, and time spun taut around them as they took their first step into the fray. The deafening crash reverberated through the room, a stark proclamation of authority that shattered the fragile moment Malik and Iman had clung to.
Instinct kicked in, and Malik's mind raced with multiple possibilities, each flash of thought competing against the threat looming before them. There was no time to mourn the connection they had forged, or to contemplate how it might slip away. It was now or never. "Iman, behind me!" Malik shouted, positioning himself protectively, the tension in his body taut like a drawn bowstring. His heart pounded in sync with the heavy footsteps of the officers. He could feel the overwhelming weight of this confrontation building above him, a storm ready to erupt. They couldn't simply succumb to fear. They had ignited something meaningful between them, and Malik was not about to let it extinguish. He formulated a swift plan, a calculated gambit born of desperation and necessity. The officers, filled with certainties of their own, were blinded by their authority. Let's create an opportunity. Iman's eyes widened, ignited with the newfound resolve Malik had sparked within him. They exchanged a wordless understanding, a vow to not merely react to their circumstances, but to find a way to narrate their own escape. Malik's thoughts flickered to moments in his life where he'd turned his vulnerabilities into strengths. He could do it again now.
As an officer bore down on them, Malik pushed forward into action, clenching a makeshift weapon, the sharp edge of an overturned table. He understood the physical danger he faced, yet a deeper awareness revealed a moment of truth. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a declaration of their identities, a stand against everything that sought to stifle their voices. He had to show Iman and himself that they could control their destinies. "For freedom," he whispered, a mantra more powerful than the threats surrounding them. The words seeped through the chaos and solidified into a palpable resolve. Before the officer could close the distance, Malik struck out, using the table's edge to create distance. It stunned the officer just momentarily, but that distraction was enough. Iman leapt forward, propelled by a fierce determination that Malik had instilled in him moments before. There was grace in his movement, a ballet of liberation, as if he'd released the weight of fear that had bound his spirit for so long. Together, they spun toward the fractured doorframe, eyes locked on what lay beyond, a world cloaked in uncertainty, but glimmering with the possibility of self-definition. They understood that this was more than evasion, it was reclamation. As they surged toward the undeniable, Malik sensed his thoughts distilling into clarity. "Now!" he yelled, pushing Iman ahead of him into the fray, flooding out into the chaos of the open street, a rush of bewildering sounds overtaking them. Malik understood then. The power to define their lives had always been theirs to wield, even against the harshest odds. Outside, the brisk air struck like an avalanche, awakening senses dulled by conflict. The cacophony of the city wrapped around them like a shroud, and every instinct within him screamed to run. But he paused, eyeing Iman, who was lost in a moment of revelation. Here they stood, side by side, no longer just survivors, but co-architects of their reality. "Malik, what if they chase us?" Iman asked, breathless, a veil of uncertainty still hanging over him. "What if they do?" Malik countered, channeling his fears into bravery. The streets were a labyrinth of choices. Their next steps could change everything. We keep moving. We keep pushing forward. We don't let them dictate our paths. In that moment, a flashing sense of responsibility coursed through Malik's veins. This was more than personal freedom. It was about reshaping the narrative of who they were, two individuals ready to challenge the world's prejudices. As they took their first steps, the realization struck Malik. The journey was just beginning. They could be agents of change in their lives, forging a path through adversity. Each stride together embodied defiance against the past, an echo of their shared commitment to reclaiming their identities. But in the distance, sirens wailed fiercely, the darkness of their former lives snapping at their heels.
Malik understood that the true battle lay ahead, and every decision would require the strength forged from the fires of this moment. The question now loomed: how would they harness this newfound determination, and could they turn it into something greater than either of them had ever envisioned? The world awaited their answer, and the heavy breaths of uncertainty hung in the air as they forged ahead into the unknown. Malik and Iman rushed down the streets, their breaths coming in rapid bursts, propelled by adrenaline and a sense of urgency. Each footfall echoed with the weight of decision, both the thrill of escape and the gravity of their new reality. They had stepped into a world that was both liberating and fraught with danger, a realm where every choice could carve their destinies anew. Around them, the chaotic symphony of the city enveloped them, the blaring horns, the shuffle of hurried footsteps, the distant growl of engines. But Malik's mind was a focused lens, dissecting their environment, each element a potential obstacle or opportunity. He realized that they were not just fleeing from the officers, they were moving toward a newfound purpose. "Where to?" Iman asked, the urgency in his voice punctuating the moment. Malik hesitated, grappling with the reality of their situation. He could almost feel the sirens creeping closer, an oppressive sound that seemed to hover in the air, mocking their plucky escape. He had to conjure a plan quickly. This was their chance to define their next steps, to shape the narrative that had already begun with their rebellion. "Let's head to the old mill," he decided abruptly, a forgotten place he had visited in his youth. A landscape of memories, it was also cloaked in secrecy, the ideal hideout. "We can collect our thoughts there." Iman nodded in agreement, and they merged into an alley, the shadows wrapping around them like a protective cloak. Each stride turned brought them closer to safety, but also deeper into uncharted territory, a place where fear and exhilaration intertwined fiercely. With every stride, Malik's mind churned with reflections of his past. How many times had he felt powerless, trapped in a narrative written by others? But today, he was no longer that boy waiting for life to unfold. He was a force determining his direction. Impressions of Iman's resolute expression settled in his mind, a partnership forged under fire that could elevate both of them above their circumstances. As they reached the mill, Malik was struck by its forgotten beauty, a once majestic structure now abandoned to time. He motioned Iman inside, and they descended into its depths, where the dust hung like the remnants of their former selves. An eerie calm surrounded them, a sharp contrast to the tension that still crackled in the air. "Do you think they'll find us?" Iman whispered, his voice barely escaping his lips. "They can try," Malik replied, emboldened by his earlier resolve. "But we're not done yet." "We have more to accomplish." The words settled heavily in the silence, mirroring Malik's desire to transform their flight into something purposeful. He scrutinized the surroundings, considering whether they could carve out a sanctuary in this derelict place. The mill resonated with the echoes of industry and innovation. Perhaps it could inspire a new vision for them. "Let's take inventory," he suggested, harnessing the creative energy that buzzed beneath the surface of his fear. "What do we need to truly define our path?" Iman's eyes lit up at the prospect as they set to work. They gathered materials, piecing together thoughts and fragments of their plan, stitching together a tapestry of ideas born from their escape. Each detail mattered greatly. This was their opportunity to shape their identities into something formidable. Yet uncertainty loomed over them like a lingering shadow. What awaited them beyond the walls? Would their choices truly lead them to empowerment, or would they encounter insurmountable challenges that threatened to unravel their newfound resolve? The sound of sirens faded, but remained a haunting whisper at the edges of their consciousness. As they crafted their vision, Malik's thoughts wandered to the question of what they were truly fighting for. Freedom was an essential right, but deeper than that lay a profound desire for authenticity and self-creation. The stakes surged in that moment. It wasn't merely about evading capture. They had uncovered the first step towards reclaiming their lives. But could they transform this moment into an enduring legacy? The decision hung before Malik, a choice between merely escaping or venturing boldly into a world where their voices could be amplified, where their identities could challenge the very fabric of societal expectations. Their next move would be monumental. With hearts steadying and determination solidifying, Malik turned to Iman, a newfound spark igniting within him. We're not just escaping, we're on the brink of something much larger. But a sudden noise shattered their concentrated thoughts, a sound approaching, fast and relentless. The moment of truth was upon them, a confrontation none could anticipate. Could they transform this mere escape into a powerful statement of who they truly wanted to be? Would they have the courage to answer the call before them? As Malik and Iman crouched in the shadows of the mill, the muffled echo of urgency surged outside. The officers were closing in, but this time they felt different, thoroughly pressed into a corner, yet activation stirred deep in their souls. No longer would they be quiet observers of their realities. They were manifesting a turning point. "How do we turn this into our strength?" Malik asked, determination threading through both of them. Their breaths quickened, the adrenaline weaving courage through both of them.
Iman looked around, eyes catching shards of sunlight breaking through the derelict structure, illuminating moments of forgotten beauty. "We need to carve out our story, show them who we are," he asserted, newfound conviction erupting forth. "That's it," Malik responded, a spark igniting between them. "We're not just running anymore, we are redefining our narratives." Each word imbued with purpose. They weren't just fleeing, they were taking back their lives, urging the world to recognize them as more than mere statistics or shadows. "Let's create something that speaks for us," Malik suggested, envisioning murals on the walls that spoke not only of their plight, but of their resilience. Iman surveyed the surroundings, ideas forging like iron in a furnace. They began scrambling to gather everything they could, a mix of spray paint, broken wood, and discarded remnants of the past, pulling them into an arsenal of creativity. This place, haunted by echoes of industry, would rise anew beneath their hands, a testament to their evolution. "Each stroke, each piece is part of our legacy," Malik declared, drawing Iman's attention back towards him. In their frenzied preparation, that the sound outside dripped into the background. They were resolute in their masterpiece. This was not just graffiti, it was their voice. Beneath the immediacy of the chaos, flames of self-definition flickered brightly. They painted their fears, their dreams, and bold declarations proclaiming their right to be seen. "This is liberation," Malik said, as the spray paint hissed and soared into vibrant colors across the faded walls. As a mural began to unfold, Malik felt the palpable essence of purpose inflating in his chest. They were warriors of their own stories. Would they successfully rise against the tide they had so often felt overwhelmed by? Just then, the booming voice of an officer erupted from outside, shattering the engrossing concentration in the mill. "Come out with your hands up. We don't want this to go any further." An intense wave of anxiety washed over Iman, his grip on the spray paint trembling. "Malik, what if they catch us?" "No one is going to catch us. We are done being outliers to our own destinies," Malik reassured him, his heart beating in rhythm with the urgency of the moment. "We're not just running, we're standing up." They continued to paint fiercely, even against the backdrop of impending conflict, a mural of defiance against all that sought to imprison them, both physically and metaphorically. Each stroke communicated their resilience. They were reclaiming their identities, inviting the world to see their truth. "Here, help me with this," Malik urged, as colors blended into shapes, even as the voices outside grew more frantic. They were solidifying the future amidst chaos, bold expressions of hope seeping through old bricks, an unwavering sign of life and courage. Suddenly, cracking sirens began to crescendo again, but strangely, Malik felt a shield forming between them and fear, encapsulating them in an empowered zone. This was their moment. No walls around them could contain the truth they were expressing. "Let's finish," Malik declared.
With each splash of color, every carefully placed line, they dismantled the weight of the past. Outside, the officers remained unaware of the transformative power unfolding within those crumbling walls. A cacophony of footsteps approached as heavy boots barreled toward the mill's entrance, the officers occupying their reality. But Malik and Iman had already forged a new narrative, one defined not by fear, but by their intentional muscularity. With renewed vigor, they applied the final touches to the mural, a masterpiece of vulnerability silhouetted against layers of strength. "Let them come," Malik cried defiantly, stepping back to admire their work, the walls now gloriously alive, an audacious proclamation of defiance and rebirth. And just as the door to the mill burst open, flooding their sanctuary with light, Malik turned to Iman, ready to face whatever would follow. This was their moment, a creation birthed from chaos and fear, a chance to showcase the resilience forged within their hearts. Nothing could diminish the ardor they had pooled together during that critical time, a testament to their journey towards freedom. In that heartbeat of heavy silence where the mural glowed, Malik felt total clarity wash over him. This was not merely survival, it was triumph. They might face consequences for their rebellion, but in the act of creation, they had secured their self-worth. What lay ahead remained uncertain, but Malik stood firmly beside Iman with unwavering confidence, ready to embrace whatever their next chapter held. They were no longer the simply haunted artists confined to the eggshell of their insecurities. Here, they had become co-creators of their destinies, ready to redefine their stories and narrate their truth in shades that spoke of hope, defiance, and possibility. The officers stood frozen in stark contrast to the vibrant expression of life before them. As they collectively absorbed the mural's message, it became abundantly clear. Change was essential, ferociously possible. This moment was only a beginning, where the unfolding promise of transformation shimmered on the horizon. With their hearts pounding in concert, Malik and Iman embraced the journey ahead, emboldened, not alone, but together, in the story they would continue to write. And amid the uncertain whispers of fate, excitement coursed through every vein. The call to adventure awaited them, radiant, filled with untainted potential that belonged solely to those who dared to pursue it. Embracing the embrace of destiny seemed like a bright certainty now. This was their moment of triumph. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories.
Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this journey. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.